going to start by asking Dr. Kreltzheim to just give a little bit of personal background, and then you will see how well suited she is to being part of this charity.
Thank you very much, Ms. Thompson. And thank you girls for coming in at your lunch break. My name is Janice Kreltzheim. I'm also known as Mrs. Smith. I work as a GP in Blackburn Clinic. I've been a GP for about 25 years, and I have a real emphasis on women's health and family planning. I've done a diploma of obstetrics and a certificate in family planning. And when I found out about Wise Choices for Life, I thought, yes, this is something that I can do. Natalie and I went to Indonesia many years ago, and we went to a place which has an orphanage and a school and a medical centre. And when I was in Indonesia, I found it really hard to work there because it was all malaria and TB and HIV. I didn't know what I was doing. But when I found out about Wise Choices, it's family planning, and I have a passion for family planning. I think people being able to choose about their fertility is really, really important. And it was a problem in Uganda where they just have such ignorance about their fertility. So I'm here to tell you about Wise Choices, and what Wise Choices is about is empowering communities to break the poverty cycle. So I'm going to show you some of my travel photos, so please indulge me because I loved going to Uganda. This is the team that I went with last year. Mainly Ugandans, but a few white faces there as well. So this is me in 2015, and then in 2016 when I was doing a little bit of teaching up the front. It seems that I went there to cuddle babies, but that was not all. The babies are gorgeous, they're beautiful kids. But first of all, what I'd like you to do is to put on your imagination. I want you to imagine that in your family you've got 6 or 7 siblings, that you are not just one of 2 or 3, but that you are one of 6 or 7. What would it be like for your holidays? What would your house look like? You'd have to share your bedrooms, you'd have probably less exciting food, what kind of car would your parents have? Would they be able to afford a car at all? Could you go on the kind of holidays that you currently go on? I'd also like you to imagine that 1/3 of you, so 1 in 3, has either been pregnant or had a baby already at your age. What would your education be like? How would you be able to carry on with your dreams? What would your future look like? So just hold that thought, and now we're going to go to Uganda. As you know, Uganda is right in the middle of Africa. It is a landlocked country. It is surrounded by Sudan, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, all areas that have had lots of trouble in time. It is got that big bit of water in the middle. It's huge. It's Lake Victoria. So it hasn't got any sea, but it's got lots of lakes and lots of water. Uganda's people are gorgeous. They're vibrant, they're colourful, they're musical, they're just loud and full of laughter. They love their families. They have large extended families. These are some banana sellers at the market. The man is usually the head of the household in Uganda, but the women are not that quiet or subservient. They will let their opinions be felt. This is the countryside of Uganda. It is just beautiful, very lush and green. Even though it's on the equator, it's on a plateau, so it's not as hot and humid as a lot of other places. It is a place where crops grow incredibly fast. Very thick forests, very arable land. They have a couple of harvests a year. When I was driving through, I saw tea, sugar, corn, coffee, rice, all kinds of things growing. Animals that they have in their farms, cows, goats, chickens, pigs, you see them all just roaming around. The markets are full of mangoes and tomatoes and all kinds of vegetables. They've also got mountain gorillas, and those are pictures I took. There's the silverback. I told you I'd show you some of my travel photos. And the bird life's fantastic, a malachite kingfisher on the River Nile. That's the source of the Nile. But Uganda is, these are some interesting facts about it. It's the second most populous landlocked country in Africa, possibly the world. I can't remember my figures there. Known as the Pearl of Africa, the capital is Kampala. It was a British colony until it gained independence in 1962. It had a terrible time under the presidency of Idi Amin between 71 and 79. Then the Lord's Resistance Army under Joseph Kony took over in the late 80s, early 90s, and there were child abductions, the child army, the child soldiers, and many adults there now will tell awful stories of their own upbringing in the midst of all of that. That's been subdued now, but they've got a terrible history. It's about the same size as Victoria, a little bit larger. According to my figures, I think Australia is about 7.7 million square kilometres. So Australia is much, much bigger. Uganda's about a little bit bigger than Victoria. It's a country with huge potential, lots of natural resources. English is the official language, it's one thing I really like, but there's numerous dialects all over, spoken all over. It's got a population of about 38 million, probably closer to 39 million now at the rate that they're going. And women there have on average 6 or 7 babies. Some will have a lot less, and many will have 10 or 15 babies. There is a high regard for the highly fertile. If you've got a large family, you're considered up there in your status, especially if you've got lots of boys. The teenage pregnancy rate is very high. A quarter of all girls by the time they're 20 have been or are pregnant. Not all of them are married, many are, but unmarried pregnant girls are rejected often by their fathers, thrown into the streets, and many of them turn to prostitution, try and abandon their babies. Once they've had their babies, sometimes they're welcomed back into the family, but not if they're pregnant. It brings dishonour to the family. So there's a lot of abandoned babies, lots of orphanages. At one little hostel I stayed at, you looked out the door and you could see about 3 or 4 different babies' homes. It was pretty tragic. Numerous street children, and women often, if they do get pregnant, will try and seek an abortion. Abortion is illegal in Uganda, so if they get an abortion, it's illegal, and many of them are in terrible, disreputable, dirty clinics. And between 2 and 6 women die every day from these illegal abortions. This is an antenatal clinic I visited. Look how young those girls are. They're beautiful, colourful, gorgeous girls, but they're probably not that much older than yourselves. This is Australia compared with Uganda. Australia's population is about 24 million, Uganda 38. And look at this statistic, the population under 15. In Australia it's about 18%, in Uganda it's 50%. And this is a population that's going to be having babies in the next 20, 30 years. So population growth is set to be enormous. The births per year in Uganda at the moment is 1.6 million, in Australia it's 321,000. And look at the life expectancy. In Uganda, I'll be expecting to die any minute now because I'm 53. But in Australia, because I'm here, I probably will have got another 30 years to go. The maternal mortality, which is, does anyone know what the maternal mortality means? Any idea? It is a figure that is the number of deaths per 100,000 live births. So this is a woman who dies anytime during her pregnancy and up to 6 weeks after the baby is born from a pregnancy-related condition. So in Australia, 7 women die per 100,000, and in Uganda it's 343. So that's 50 times the difference. So in Uganda you get nearly 6,000 women dying every year, or about 16 women dying per day. And in Australia it's 21 deaths per year, which is 21 too many, but still, look at the difference. And because they have more babies in their lifetime, you have a lifetime maternal risk of dying, a lifetime risk of maternal mortality in Uganda of 1 in 47 compared to 1 in 8,700. So that's a bit of a difference. But this is Nancy. That's not really Nancy, that's about the only picture that I haven't taken. I took it from the internet. So a lady, Nancy, she was about 20, she was studying accounting, she had a bright future ahead of her, but she was pregnant. She had a supportive boyfriend. It's unusual in Uganda to not be married and have been pregnant, but nevertheless she was supported by her boyfriend. Her waters broke, but she didn't feel too bad. Now in Australia, if your waters break, you go into hospital. You ring the midwives and say, what should I do? And they say, come into hospital, or this is not a safe condition. But she didn't know what to do. She stayed at home. Her boyfriend gave her some Panadol. She started to feel a little bit unwell, or maybe she'd eaten something bad. She thought. Over the next few days, she felt a bit more unwell, but still wasn't really in labour. So she thought, oh, I better stay at home. And she became feverish. Eventually, she called her father, who said, go into hospital. But by the time she got there, she was severely septic. By her waters breaking, infection had got into her uterus, and she was really, really unwell. She died. And this is tragic. It's a completely preventable death. This is just one example of women dying unnecessarily in Uganda. So a woman in Uganda is 50 times more likely to die from a pregnancy-related cause than a woman in Australia. These are preventable deaths, and the common causes are bleeding, either bleeding during pregnancy or bleeding after having the baby, infection, as in Nancy's case, high blood pressure, obstructed labour, unsafe abortions, and these are young women who are dying, women in their child-rearing years, and they often have had other babies and they leave these babies motherless. So what happens to these families who've got no mothers? Often the father remarries. The new wife doesn't really want to look after all his other babies, and these kids are left not very well cared for. And we see this again and again in Uganda. So this is Marg Docking, my hero. She went to Uganda in 2009. She was a lady who had a lot of experience as a midwife. She delivered babies all around Australia, working with Aboriginal communities and working in rural places. She was really experienced. She could deliver just about any baby. But when she got there, she was all the D words: devastated, disillusioned, discouraged, dismayed by this huge death rate, not just of the babies, but of the mothers. She was in tears, and she decided that delivering babies was not the solution. Staying there and just saving one mother at a time was not going to save all the others. And how was she to address this high rate of sickness and poverty? Just going to show you a video.
Uganda is a beautiful country, a people made in God's image, but they are suffering. Every day, 16 mothers die in childbirth. They have one of the fastest growing populations in the world, and in turn, one of the highest maternal death rates. Traditional thinking encourages them to have too many children, starting too young before the body is ready, too close together so their bodies can't recover, and for too long, growing weaker and weaker with every child. The poorest families can have over 13 children that their mothers and fathers simply cannot provide for. Poverty becomes intergenerational. And while aid efforts help to relieve the symptoms, they can never treat the cause. If this cycle is ever going to end, something has to change at the heart of Uganda.
In 2009, I came to Uganda as a midwife, and what I found was needless maternal death, abandoned babies, children and teenage mothers living on the street. There were so many orphanages and aid agencies trying to help, yet few of the really poor people seemed to have even basic knowledge about conception, pregnancy or controlling fertility. So I left the hospitals and started travelling. I met the people where they were and learned everything I could about their beliefs, their history, and why they were having so many children. The key seemed to lie in the many myths surrounding reproduction, how the men valued women and children, and their understanding of strength. For men in Uganda, strength was measured by the size of your family. It was clear that if change was to come, men would have to be a driving force in that change. So, working with the locals, we wrote down all the knowledge that was seen as most important to the future of Ugandan families. And that was how Wise Choices for Life began. We started a series of workshops on reproductive health, teaching a combination of practical medical knowledge and God's purpose and value for each life. They were small at first, but we were amazed to find that everyone we talked to wanted to know more. They were so hungry for answers and to gain understanding. We taught about puberty, sex, conception, pregnancy, relationships, family planning, gender roles, and critical thinking, leading to wiser decisions for their future. For the first time, people were discussing the why of Uganda. Using discussion, reflection, and dramas in an open atmosphere, they were free to question traditional myths and practices. And then once they completed the workshops and passed an exam, they could buy a training kit with with charts and models, tools to pass the knowledge on to others. You can see in their eyes that something really exciting is happening, and the demand for these workshops just keeps growing. It was never about coming in and fixing Uganda's problems. It's about empowering Ugandans with the knowledge of how God made our bodies, to know the Father's heart for families, and to see the way to a better future. Choice over your fertility leads to choice over so many other circumstances in life. And while knowledge alone can't change behaviour, a combination of life skills and a changed worldview on the value and purpose of every life can.
Wise choices for life is not a quick fix solution. It's long, hard work that takes generations. But it's working. You can see the men shifting their thinking and the women filled with a new hope as they realise they can choose the size of their family. And it's happening right now, all over Uganda.
I try not to regret, but if I was in wise choices before, I would have had only maybe 4 children. I would have not popped many like that. I would have had just enough that I can take care of.
So we invite you to partner with us and treat the causes of intergenerational poverty.
I love that video. I've seen it many times. The first few times I cried because I thought, this is just speaking to me. I want to get involved. I want to go there. And so I did. What was it I say? So when I saw this, I rang Marg up. I thought I have to do something. I rang her and I convinced her to take me to Uganda in 2015 and then in 2016, and now I'm on the board and quite involved with helping to write materials and do lots of things. This is the poverty cycle that she talks about. When people go overseas, often what they do is they treat the disease. They fix the malaria, they look after the diseases and the fruits of the problem. But what you really need to do is to address the ignorance that's leading to the disease, that's contributing to the poverty and then perpetuating the cycle. So all kinds of knowledge are needed to break the poverty cycle, and what Marg hit on was the fact that sexual and reproductive health is something that they just did not get. They were maybe being educated to immunise their babies, they were told how to get clean water, but nobody was talking about sex education. It was kind of a taboo subject. There is a lot of ignorance, and worse than ignorance is actually misinformation. It's the wrong knowledge. There's a lot of myths and traditions that people were following, such as this myth that the bigger your family, the better off you will be, the wealthier you'll be by having lots and lots of sons. It is just simply not true, and to challenge that is really important. So the areas of ignorance that these workshops address: how a woman's body works, how to control one's fertility. This is stuff that you ladies all learnt when you were in grade 4 and 5, and yet we're finding adults thinking, oh, is that how it happens? How to have a safe pregnancy for people like Nancy, when to go to the hospital, what are the danger signs, what do you need to know to make sure that everything is going to go well? How to have a safe birth, what about positive parenting, the role of women, evaluating myths and traditions, and things like having sex with a virgin is going to cure HIV. That is a myth that is just perpetuated over there. There's poor girls out there. So things like HIV and AIDS are addressed, about sexually transmitted diseases, about infertility, about menstrual hygiene, sanitary wear. A lot of girls have no access to pads, and here we show them how to make some reusable pads. So all of that is part of it. Domestic violence is a big issue, and that is addressed in the workshops. Female genital mutilation is not a big problem, but there are pockets, little villages out in the countryside where that is still practiced, so it's challenging that as well. It's not being a good idea. So these workshops are really the core of Wise Choices for Life, and they've got a multifaceted approach to education. It's not just learning about biology, but it's how to apply that knowledge. So people are encouraged to think critically, to communicate well, how to make wise decisions, and all about how to relate very well between each other, how to be positive about your relationships. The focus is also on interactive learning. The style of teaching is really fun and interactive. It's all about training, so there's a lot of hands-on work. There's drama. You might have seen in the video this man all dressed up like a witch doctor. It's a lot of that. They love to get into the drama. It's great fun, and they take their debates very seriously. Discussion, small groups, role-playing, and one really key part of Wise Choices is it involves the men as well as the women. You can't just tell the women you should be doing this and then they go home and the husband say, no, you're not going to go on the pill. If you talk to the men about it, then they often are the decision makers and get on board. I'm just going to get Natalie to come up as a volunteer, please, to show you a little bit about how we do our workshops. Now, I'm turning this room into a birthing suite. Don't tell Mrs. Snow, but this is going to be a labour ward. Natalie, that's your plastic pelvis, and you're about to have a baby in front of us. I'll help you deliver this baby. Okay, now push, come on, push. Harder. Oh, gosh, that was quick. Congratulations on that. You've got a beautiful little baby girl, I think. Okay. Now, instead of this being the baby, imagine if this was your baby. Okay? So realistic. This baby's going to come through here. Okay. Now you're having a bit of trouble there. Come on, push. Come on. A little push. Oh my goodness, it's going to be a few days, a few hours. Have you got money to pay for a cesarean? No, my dear, that's a bit bad, isn't it? A few hours later, you're going to be pushing. Now imagine that this is your bladder in the front here, and this is your bowel at the back. Come on, keep pushing. What's going to happen to the bladder and the bowel while she's pushing? They're going to get damaged. The hard head of the baby pushing against the mother's pelvis is going to damage that bladder, going to damage that bowel, and what's going to happen at the end of it? The baby's going to die, the mother will develop a fistula. A fistula is when there is a communication between the birth passage or the vagina and the bladder and the bowel. This baby's probably going to die and come out all squished, and maybe mother will die as well. But sometimes the baby's delivered and the mother is just left with this permanent leakage between the bladder and the bowel and the vagina. This woman's got no control over urination or opening her bowels, and she is ostracised and rejected by family. Thank you for your help. So this is how we teach about fistulas, and everybody gets a go in the workshops to deliver or pretend to deliver a big baby or a little baby, and it suddenly makes sense. You know, this is what happens. And hey, let's try and prevent it. If a woman is trying to have a baby at age 14 and her pelvis is not fully developed, she really needs a caesarean section. She's basically still a little girl. And you might have seen in the video, there were a whole lot of little girls that were very pregnant in there. And many of them, if they're not looked after properly, will end up with a fistula. So these are some more illustrations of the workshops. Those are two priests actually dressed up as witch doctors doing some sort of drama. They were very funny. And this is the kind of communication skills and skills that we really encourage all through the workshop. And there's a man writing up. He's talking about the virtues of fun love versus true love. So it's a really fun lesson that we have. So I've got some examples here. You can come up and have a look after of the Wise Choices for Life kits. We've got this magnetic board with the menstrual cycle, lots of ideas of magnetic bits from the babies and how they grow. So we've got the plastic dolls and the pelvis. We've got knitted uterus, which we'll show you in a minute, flip books, puberty book, a book for fathers, all these videos, manuals, and at the end of the workshop people get a certificate which they can frame and take up. So that's the plastic dolls and pelvises, the knitted uteruses, which demonstrate what happens with postpartum hemorrhages, and once the uterus has grown really big, how it can be very hard for it to shrink back down. So these are some of the other resources which are fantastic, and we've had some of them translated into Swahili for use in Tanzania and Kenya. So the locals love it. They love these workshops. They're fascinated, they love the content, they love the method of teaching. It has been endorsed by the Ministry of Health, which shows that it's a scientifically accurate program. It's been endorsed by the Church of Uganda, so priests are actually taking this program into their youth groups. And they're not teaching women that it's bad to use family planning. The Ugandan Christian University is also starting to use this which I think that shows that they really like the teaching style. I loved seeing all these amazing people, these leaders in the community, embrace information and then taking it back into their communities. This is a gorgeous lady called Joyce. She's the country director. She's just started working full-time for us. She has a team of volunteers and they're setting up as a non-government organisation, the new Ugandan board. They're working in schools and communities. One exciting place is the female prison, where the prisoners are learning about wise choices, and a lot of the prison guards are learning about it as well, and they love it because the prisoners are becoming better behaved. They're easier to rehabilitate now that they are learning a bit more about themselves. And they often say, if I'd known this before, I wouldn't have ended up in prison. This is the Ugandan committee. They're a gorgeous bunch of people. And these are some beautiful new leaders, Moses and Lillian. Lillian had the most amazing wardrobe. She had a turban to match every different outfit and a handbag or two. It was beautiful. Lovely smile. So the Kampala conference in 2016 that I went to was fantastic. And there's a new one this year, but that's right in the time of the Year 12 exam, so I won't be going this year. So I'd like you now also to continue your imagining. I'd like you to imagine in Uganda that there are less mothers dying and less mothers getting sick. That's what morbidity means. They're not necessarily dying, they're getting sick in pregnancy. I'd like you to imagine what it's like in Uganda if they had manageable sized families, if women had better outcomes for their health. Imagine what it's like to have less unplanned pregnancies, less orphans and less need for orphanages and abandoned babies, less street children. Imagine what it's like to have more respectful relationships between husband and wife, improved parenting skills. One thing that they did say was, now I know I'm not going to hit my children, I'll talk to them instead. So these are some of the basic things that are addressed in the training program. And I'd love to see Wise Choices for Life being taken into surrounding African countries such as Kenya and Tanzania, where we had some people come and do the workshop last year. And I'd love to see it taken around the world. And maybe, ladies, you can be part of this whole dream too. That would be awesome. Thank you very much. I'd like now to ask if anyone's got any questions that they want to ask about it. Yes.
Sorry. What did you say they were doing at the Uganda Christian University? Are they running the workshops or are they training people at the university themselves?
Yeah, two things. The Joyce, the director, she was actually a lecturer in social work at that university, and she has got a lot of her fellow lecturers involved doing the course. And now it is being used as almost like in service for all the lecturers at one of the branches of that university. So that's what happened in May. A lot of the lecturers went and ran and did the course. Now they're going to start using it as a subject in one of their foundational courses. It's the health and wellness course that they are running, a bit like a basic health sciences course. And Wise Choices is going to be one of the subjects in that, but that's yet to come. So they're just rewriting the curriculum to introduce Wise Choices as part of that. And then you can have all these young people being able to take this knowledge, and also not just the knowledge, but also the way of teaching, which is a bit of fun. A bit different from me standing out here and talking. It's a bit more interactive. Any other questions? Sorry, sorry.
Apart from these, although it is a really good program and stuff, what are the main challenges that the campaign has to get over? Because from the work that we've done,
yep.
I kind of put together that some of the ministries and stuff, and because religion is a big part of Uganda and stuff,
yep.
and they do say that the prevalence of contraception and stuff kind of sends bad messages to the youth, saying how sex is, instead of procreation, it's something that's advertised as fun instead. And so is that kind of a problem? Because you did say that priests are getting on board.
Yeah.
What are the other challenges and stuff like that?
Yeah, well, I think getting the men involved is really, really important, and getting into the church is really important. What other challenges are there? I think we're trying to tread a fine line between we want to be very scientific and very professional about it, so this is all accurate, and so we try and partner up with the family planning clinics around wherever they do it. They say, We are not professional people, because most people are not professional who are running the course. They are teachers and youth workers, they have to partner with and know what the local family planning clinics are in the area so that they can refer people to it. So sometimes people come up and want to know how to come up to them and say, can you tell me how to use the pill? I say, well, actually, I'll tell you the pill does this generally, but to get the specific knowledge, you go to the family planning clinic. So to try and have those good partnerships is really important. I don't think I'm answering your question very well. But to try and get into the faith-based, it's a faith-based organisation. It's a Christian organisation, so that gives it a whole lot of credit in Uganda. It is a Christian country. It is not a Roman Catholic. It's mainly Anglican or Protestants, so they are not against contraception, most of them. There are still some that will say you shouldn't be using it, it's evil. But I think the pastors are realising that it is absolutely essential that kids are having sex, that they need to give them the knowledge as to what it's all about. It will promote abstinence. One of the lessons that we do is the advantages of abstinence, but it will understand that people don't always obey that. So the idea is to have that sex is good, but it's got to be in the right context. It's got to be in the right context within a loving relationship. Any other questions? Yeah.
With the little demonstration given, so in the situation where the baby was like too big and was causing a difficulty, and like they can't afford a C-section, like do they just leave it?
Often they do. That was why Marg was so upset. She was working as a midwife, and she realised that there were 4 women that she was looking after who needed a caesarean. The doctor came in and she thought, oh great, some of these women are going to get the caesareans that they need. And so the doctor went into each of these rooms and wrote in the notes, and then he left, and she thought, what's going on? She went to their notes, and the doctor had written, needs a caesarean, call me when she has money. And that was repeated 4 times. And she just threw her hands up in the air and just ran out, and she was crying. And that's when the whole of Wise Choices for Life began. The doctors, it doesn't cost a lot to have a caesarean, but people do not save enough money. It's like, oh, she's had 5 babies before, this one will be a doddle. But by the time the 6th baby comes along, the uterus is all tired and not really contracting, the woman contraction and needs a caesarean, but because they haven't factored in the possibility that they might need $100 or whatever for caesarean, the woman just dies, and then she's got 5 babies left behind. So that was what triggered Marg's response. So often they just die, and the doctors may have, you can't say, oh, it's the doctor's fault, they should have just done it. Often they will be doing a lot anyway, but how much can they keep on going? The whole community needs to take responsibility for looking after each other.
When you're talking about the women in the jail, and how you said that a lot of them said they wouldn't have ended up there if they'd known, why is that?
Part of it was just a lot to do with the communication skills, the decision-making skills, relationship skills side of things, and also just understanding about many of them are taken advantage of, and many of them had no idea what sex was about, and they've got the boyfriend and he sort of takes them off and suddenly they're pregnant, and then they might, one lady that was there because she killed her boyfriend, and she was a feisty character but very on board with all of this and became an incredible leader. And she's saying, if I'd known about this and I'd known how to say no, I'd learned how to be safe, I'd known I could have got pregnant, she would not have been there. And a lot, it's not only in the women's prison, and I was in tears when I went there hearing about a lot of the cases that happened. They've got now into a youth remand centre, so kids from 12 to 18 are there. Many of them are awaiting trial. They haven't even been convicted yet, but they're just put there just to keep them off the streets. And also in the men's prison, which is huge, and many of them in the men's prison have been there because of what's called sexual perversion, or because they've raped women. So if you can go in and tell them, hey, this is not a good thing to do, many of them are changing as well.
Do many women go to prison because of prostitution?
They
would
would
kind of
yeah.
blind, turn a blind eye.
Some, yeah. Yes. Some, yeah. A lot of street kids, you go out at night time and you see these kids running around. It's heartbreaking. Yeah.
Do you have any statistics at all? I'm just curious about how many people have trained, because it's kind of like that knock-on effect. You train 10 and they train 10 and then it just keeps growing.
We are trying to work on our monitoring and evaluation numbers. I think Marg would be a better person to talk about the statistics. We know that we gave 34 people certificates at the end of last November, and these would then go on into their communities. And then they will often buy these kits, which are a big help with the training. The kits cost $500. They're not that cheap to make because there's a lot of magnets and the doll, the pelvis, and I suppose that's not so much, it's more the magnets and the books that go with it. I'm not sure. The organisation's only about 6 years old. It's pretty young.
Yes, actually. It's like a challenge getting people to buy the kits because they're so expensive.
It is a challenge. Once they have done the course, they will often see how vital the kits are. Many of the people who come and do the course have been sponsored by other organisations such as Compassion, International Needs. We're trying to work with people like World Vision, and often those organisations will get funding from their sponsors from Australia or America. And sometimes they will just save up. We also try and partially pay for some of the kits. We will raise up some money here and pay for a kit, and then they might pay for half of it. One challenge in Uganda is that there is a real dependency mentality. They see a white face and they want us to pay for everything. And Marg is trying to really ask them to become responsible for their own funding. And so that's why she doesn't like to give things away too much. But it is expensive.
That's actually in a case study we were doing this year, it was Uganda last year, looking at a case study. In this case it was constructing wells, so they had a clean supply of water. Same issue of, unless there's a sense of ownership and responsibility, you can get these wonderful projects come in, but within 6 months, 12 months, a couple of years, the well's disused, it's not being well maintained, it all just falls away. You really need to get the community to have ownership and take responsibility. So it's actually a really good part of the program that happens.
So we will work with them, like these books. We will say, we'll give you the books, but you need to sell them and then you can get the profit. So it's working with them that they need to actually sell them to make the money to go into their little bank account. So that's all the exciting thing, setting it up as their own NGO. And then they make a lot of the rules and we work with them. Any other questions? Thank you so much for your attention. You guys have been awesome.
Can I also thank Natalie? Your raising of this was so timely, and this is an ideal response. You will also notice I've done a bit of a write-up of the response. I've skewed it slightly to talk about Marg docking, but more from local people have worked with Marg, because we want it to be a response that's been really coming out at a local level from Uganda. So make sure you look at my wording. I will type up some of the extra information that we've just been given, so that you've got, and some of the questions have been really good and prompted some of that extra material to evaluate how good the response is. And I will share that with you as well. I'll probably add it to the document on Google Drive, plus I'll email it around. And I also want to thank you girls for attending. It's brilliant that so many of you are here.
We just wanted to say a big thank you for coming down and speaking to us about some of the issues and challenges, as well as some wise choices for life solutions.
Thank you so much.
I think in a nutshell, you have covered the issues of a growing population. Much better than I do over many weeks.
We come and have a look at the kids.